talking about the space for breathing in democracy, I'm thinking of the crisis of what the space of breathing is, which is the public sphere. The public sphere is really where we appear to each other as citizens. Is the public sphere slipping away? And in new ways, because I was just reading today in the New York Times, there's an article that claims that we have to stop the manipulation of democracy online. So the article was referring basically not only to the Russian manipulation of the US election, but also to the proliferation of professional fake news, professionalization of the fake news fabricants, and non-transparent political advertising. So the question is a kind of a two-steps question for Patrizia first, for Patrizia Nanz first. So in general, is the public sphere disappearing, dissolving, and are the new social media heavily responsible for that? There was a time in which we thought, well, no, the social media are opening spaces for democracy. We saw the Arab Spring, right? What is happening there?
It's not dissolving, it's disintegrating, I guess.
Yeah.
But the public sphere was never homogeneous. This is an historical myth, I think. There was never one public sphere. It was always heterogeneous. But I think that today the cleavages are much deeper for different reasons. First, because, as I said, I think that the crisis of democracy is a crisis of society in the fact that we have big cleavages within society, and this sort of rebuilds in the public sphere, or readdresses itself in the public sphere. But at the same time, I think that the internet and the social media even deepen these cleavages, because you can easily, talk only to people and listening to people who have the same views, this sort of gated communities, or you also call it echo chamber. You always talk to yourself, sort of, yeah? And you never are sort of exposed to other views, so you don't learn and you don't broaden your view, which is of course a very bad grounding for democracy. We have to negotiate different views and different interests and to think about new ideas. So I think that it's really eroding not only the public sphere, it's eroding the common ground we are talking. I mean, the gemeinsame Welt Hannah Arendt talks about. And so this is really the basis of democracy. And if we are not going out of our bubble, there is not a realm of the political. So I believe that the political itself is sort of shrinking, and this is much deeper than only saying that the public sphere is fractured or fading away. This is one point. And the other point, of course, is if you have also the fake news, which is even eroding more the common ground or the reality we share. But also bots, you never know who said what. And you have, of course, interests. I mean, the companies in Silicon Valley are shaping heavily our public opinion. And this is not, they have a certain, worldview. It's not they're not neutral players. And all the attempts I've seen also in the European Union to regulate the internet are pretty weak. I mean, there is practically no regulation of the internet so far. So it's not a neutral place anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there are two big problems here. As Patrizia said, the division of the public sphere into these echo chambers, and I mean the departure from the world of facts, which can take place, and departures which are never denounced. The people who are seeing these things on their Facebook page, it's such and such, Hillary Clinton did this or that. But she didn't at all. Never get the denial. I think there's a deeper problem. I want to talk about those two in a minute, but there's a deeper problem, which is that the way in which these social media operate in people's lives is subtly different from the way in which news media are supposed to operate and used to operate. I mean, there's a certain element of self-display, of showing oneself in a certain way, which is sort of lighthearted and not necessarily closely fact-related, right? And how to change that, or how to stop that from undermining our debates, is something very, very deep, and I wish I had the answer. I would like to have a program to put before you. But I think at least we can do more to defend against just, frankly, lies. You know, there is if I say something terrible about you as another politician, that you're taking bribes, you will sue me and take a lot of money off me unless I can prove that. But if Fox News says that Obama's trip around the world costs so many billions when it costs a few thousands, nobody stops them. And if I'm running something like Facebook, I'm running a medium in which terrible things are said and never checked. Right? So again, there has to be some kind of, I hate to use the word, but some kind of policing in the name of just pure factual truth, so that Fox News could be made to pay big money, I mean serious money, and I mean, if we apply the analogy of you know, calumny, of defending my reputation, you not only pay big money, but you publish the denial with exactly the same size and saliency as the original lie. So I think we're going to have to take measures to defend ourselves against just the propagation of lies, to put it very bluntly. But that doesn't touch the deeper issue of the way in which social media operate in people's lives, which may not make them ideal as being vehicles of the public sphere.
Can I go on to a more philosophical question? Because you mentioned Hannah Arendt, so the public sphere is the one where we appear to others, is being profoundly human, is appearing, being seen by others. So the question is a little articulated in a more naive way, if you want. So what's the difference between what happens in the social media, as Charles has just said, that is people manifesting themselves, showing off even themselves? There's not a form of appearing to others. What's the difference between that kind of showing off, manifesting yourself via the social media and the echo chamber, and appearing to others as citizen in the public sphere, which is, as you said, something that is in the middle, is constructed by us? But I wonder whether you can elaborate a little bit on that. Is there a difference?
I think there is a difference, but it's also part of what you said before. It's the economization of the private life. It's sort of being one's own entrepreneur, you know. When we have professional interviews, I feel that the generations are very much under pressure to have the perfect CV, to have everything in apparently, coherent, and they're very much working on this appearance. And so I sometimes have the feeling that it's much more, it's more difficult to have a connection to the inner sort of, how can I say, convictions to what they really ought to do in life, rather than to keep on appearing as if someone would judge what their appearance should look like. So I think that there is some sort of distortion or even alienation in this form of constantly dealing with appearance and communication to others. But this is just a guess. This is not empirically.
I mean, if you look at what Arendt was talking about, and it's really partly related to Heidegger, but largely related to the ancient republics and polis. So I'm Pericles, let's say, right? So my appearance is not just my appearance. I'm acting. I'm putting forward some leadership, which will either be taken up or rejected, which will mark me in history in terms of what I did, what I achieved, Whereas a lot of the self-appearance in the social media is kind of on a whimsical level. It's kind of how I feel today, and I woke up this morning, etc. It's not. So it's the putting together of appearance and action that Arendt was really getting at, and that seems to disappear. And even more if you have what Wendy Brown was saying earlier, if we have the idea of the proper human agent as an entrepreneur. I mean, because a lot of these things that I launch as an entrepreneur may not appear at all. I mean, I have this very attractive soap or something I'm selling and so on, and I'm using all sorts of symbols to catch you and make you want to buy my soap. So it's not even, what I'm doing is not even fully appearing. And I don't want it all to appear. Yeah.
And for Arendt, it wouldn't be acting.
Yeah,
The role in the entrepreneur is not acting, it's what is working, or, you know, whatever crafting. It remains in the private sphere, right? So exactly. So the appearance in the echo chambers is not actually does not create the public sphere. It forecloses it rather.
Thank you very much for this talk. It lines up nicely because we had a workshop last week here, talking about democracy and crisis and so on as well. So I was wondering, in all your talks, oh, by the way, Ina is my name from the IASS. So there's a lot of focus on the public sphere and how this is sort of like getting disrupted in a way, in different ways. And then the other thing that I notice a lot when you talk, like both of you as well, is there's a lot of talk about we, right? So I'm wondering when you talk about how we have to negotiate, be in the public sphere, go out of the bubble, who are we talking about? Because when I'm out talking to people, and part of my family is from a rural area in the east of Germany, so when I talk to the people there, I don't get this, I want to participate more in the public sphere, I want to talk more in the public sphere. I get other things, such as, what is my future going to look like if I don't have a job anymore? How do I feed my kids? What is happening when I don't have enough pension in 20 years down the road, right? So I'm wondering, what are we talking about when we see democracy and talking about crisis there?
It seems to be a very, very political issue. I mean, there are possible proposals which could meet those needs, right? That's where political leadership has to connect the dots. You know, it's not, there are other issues which may seem totally irrelevant or orthogonal to whether your pension is going to be there, but there are also issues. I mean, for instance, what kind of economic future one discovers for this region, right, that can survive and thrive in present market conditions has everything to do with, the future pension or future income of people. So it's a matter of connecting to the issues one wants to raise, connecting these concerns.
But that's exactly what we said before. I mean, if you take regions which are disconnected, and I think there is now a whole bunch of people going out and talking to, like an anthropologist talking to these people and finding out what they think, and this comes exactly out what you just say. But it's another question to go there, because of course, even in these regions, there are actors of change, first of all. Okay, they're not totally passive, everyone. And of course, from there, you try to enroll a self-organized process to include even more and more and more people to exchange. And it's not, I don't believe that they will always stay passive from now to there and they're not going to learn and there's no hope, because otherwise there's nothing to do. So I think you have to start from the strength of a region and from the agents who are already active, and then try to sort of incorporate more and more people to get them out of their passivity and hopelessness. Otherwise, there's no other way of doing it. I mean, it's not going to be top-down. There will be no solution top-down.
May I sort of continue on that? Because that basically means the focus now for the future lays on the individual to take care of a certain future, right? Not on the collective, like movements or whatever. Is that the focus that you're sort of going to?
No, to include individuals in the exchange to finding solutions together with the politicians. It's precisely to overcome individualism, because I think we have had enough about individualism and the individual solutions.
I was thinking of the question about the we as something, going back to the discussion we had about Hannah Arendt, not as something, so the public sphere is not there, and then we enter. There is a door and there is a we that enters and takes a seat, but it's really a task, and a constant task. And sometimes when we have this conversation, I'm kind of jumping into a completely different discourse, but it resonates in the back of my mind. The critique from, for example, queer theory that questions the we, because every we all recreates and regenerates forms of discrimination, right? So the we is a contested concept, is a task, is not neutral, is not pure, is not good as such. And if it's not continuously open to the process. I feel the need to mention that.
Yeah, perhaps I would talk about the we in a second order, because it's not a homogeneous we, it's a we which has to be always open. And there's a book called, Collaborating with the Enemy, meaning if you have to go through, conflicts to be able to have a we. It's not just, the we of the same group of people. This is not the way we can live in modern societies, of course. But without political community, we will not be able to shape our society.
And I don't know why I keep going back to Arendt, but one of the things that I found so interesting in her is this distinction between, I've read her in German, damn it. So, Brüderlichkeit, between fraternities and friendship as a political space. So, so there is a we which is collapsing together to a kind of identity that defines us. Mm-hmm. And the alternative is the we that we construct as the public sphere, which is a mediated and open process. I don't know whether that goes in the direction.
Yeah, exactly.
That's Armin Haas from IASS. And I grew up in a rather different world than we have today. In the world in which I grew up, there was quite some substantial political debates, and they were reflected in the media. And there was big stuff. So how to deal with the Vietnam War, how to deal with the Cold War, how to deal with the nuclear energy. So big things, very controversial. Now, today, most often I'm told there is no alternative from politicians. And when it comes to the media, just as a thought experiment, say in 1975 you went to an expedition to the Arctic, you returned after 1 year and you wanted to know what's going on, well, you would know which newspapers to buy to get the leftish and which newspaper to buy to get the rightish view, and then you, in a way, could catch up. Now it basically doesn't matter which newspaper you buy because they report all the same. So there's quite a transformation that took place. The question is, how did it happen and why? And I don't understand that. Maybe you do.
That is a great question. So, do you?
Well, I'm not quite sure what, but certainly the whole economic basis of newspapers has radically changed. Right? So they, things like the Times, New York Times, the London Times, and so on, which could afford to pay really, competent correspondents everywhere and so on, don't exist anymore. The whole flow of advertising revenue has gone in other directions, right? So this is a very, very big question. Now, there are certain newspapers that are managing to survive newspapers, without paper. But this is a radical shift. This requires that people be very computer savvy, which I have to admit I'm not, in order to follow them. But I think part of the reason is this radical shift in the whole economic basis of the newspaper, which is the end of a very long era, going back to the middle 19th century.
Well, but of course the internet also changed a lot, as everyone knows, the media as such. But not only the media in terms of the newspapers. For example, I remember before Schirmacher died, I had a discussion with him, and he really made a very good example. He said, when I write an article about ACTA, which was the movement to regulate the internet, in 2 hours, I get 20,000 commentaries. So what's the public sphere? It's not one article. And so the self-efficacy of the people and of readers increased very much. So what happens through the internet, because everyone can write in the internet, and he thinks that someone will, deliver an answer. Like if you want to buy something at Amazon, you get something delivered. It's a very user type of thing. It's not really the citizens who really deliberate, and then in the end they have decisions with lots of different other citizens. So it's very this sort of give and take very quickly. And what I was saying, what I want to say with that, but is that somehow the the intermediaries you just mentioned, the 70s or 80s, the so-called opinion makers, Meinungsmacher in German, have not the same role as they used to have. And this is also due to the kind of illusion of many citizens to be have some sort of self-efficacy through writing in the internet, and not wanting to sort of get too many filters of opinions through other people's articles, for example. And this kind of shifting of the intermediaries as such, I think, has deteriorated the debate for democratic questions a lot.